First story, if someone had told me 5 years after graduating from high school that my high school sweetheart would betray me or engage in another relationship while we were engaged, I would have dismissed it as a joke. Throughout high school, I provided financial support to my sweetheart as she sought better opportunities. Known for my focus, intelligence, caring nature, and active participation in various groups, I exited high school in excellent physical condition. My only sport pursuit was wrestling, a sport I relished for its liberating allowance of unrestricted eating and the ease with which I could burn off calories during matches. While some might draw parallels to football, wrestling diverges significantly in its intensity, lacking the interval training and potential for brain injuries inherent in football. I was romantically involved with an older, attractive girl who had graduated 2 years before and joined a university in another state. We initiated a long-distance relationship with aspirations of me joining her at the same school after my graduation. Our acquaintance started at a mutual friend's birthday celebration, during which we were both in separate relationships. Despite her attendance with her boyfriend, she ended up spending the night and sleeping with me. Then, she persuaded me to end my existing relationship with my girlfriend for her sake. Despite the weak connection, her physical attractiveness played a considerable role in my decision-making process. She also ensured that she would terminate her relationship with her boyfriend, a pledge she fulfilled. After graduating, we became engaged, with the intention of marriage upon the completion of our respective postgraduate studies. I chose to enroll in the same university as my fiancée, where she pursued a bachelor's degree in nursing, while I embarked on a pre-medical track, aiming for a bachelor's degree in biology prior to applying to medical school. Throughout our college years, my fiancée and I rented an off-campus apartment in close proximity to the university. Initially, we both engaged in part-time employment alongside our academic efforts. Fortunately, I enjoyed the advantage of a 4-year academic scholarship, which reduced much of our financial burden. Consequently, the weight of financial responsibility mainly rested upon my fiancé, as both of our families hailed from modest backgrounds and grappled with their own financial challenges. Thus, we found ourselves largely self-reliant in navigating our financial obligations. During her 3rd year in school, my fiancée encountered some serious challenges with her grades. Despite consistently achieving B-minuses, she found herself struggling to meet the requirements for admission into the nursing program. It was a tough spot for her, and she came to me seeking help. She expressed a desire to cut back on her work hours and dedicate more time to studying, believing that this shift would lead to an improvement in her grades. As I pondered our relationship and the commitment we had made to each other, I felt a strong sense of duty to support her through this difficult time. I couldn't bear the thought of her being disqualified from the nursing program due to poor grades. It was important to me that she could focus on her studies without the added stress of working long hours. Despite her dedication to both work and school, finding a balance proved to be a significant challenge for her. In contrast, I found myself immersed in a demanding work schedule, often working up to 60 hours a week. This heavy workload was necessary to cover our essential expenses, including healthcare, rent, and utilities. Despite having a full scholarship, I still had to maintain a high GPA and a minimum credit hour load to remain in the program. The combination of work and academic responsibilities began to take its toll on my health. I had previously been committed to staying in shape by training with the college wrestling team. However, as I took on more shifts to support my fiancé, I gradually stopped working out altogether. Despite this change in my routine, I continued to consume the same amount of food, resulting in a significant weight gain of 70 to 80 pounds. As our relationship began to deteriorate, there were instances where my fiancé would disappear without explanation, leaving me feeling anxious and confused. Instead of answering my calls, I would receive brief text messages or automated responses indicating that she couldn't talk at the moment. Caught up in the demands of my own academic and professional pursuits, I found myself unable to confront her about her behavior. Looking back, there was one particular incident that stood out to me. During a phone call, I overheard a man's voice in the background, accompanied by heavy breathing. When I questioned her about it, she abruptly ended the call. Despite my attempts to reach out to her afterward, she remained silent. When she finally called back, she claimed to be at the gym and being bothered by someone. However, I knew she hadn't been at the gym when I called, but I chose to trust her explanation and didn't press further. Despite the challenges we faced, I managed to graduate with my undergraduate degree ahead of schedule. However, my fiancée still had 2 more years to complete her nursing program. We made the decision together that I would take the medical entrance exam, but postpone starting medical school until after she finished nursing school. Medical school would be incredibly demanding, and I knew I couldn't juggle a rigorous academic program with a demanding work schedule. Additionally, I wanted to avoid accumulating excessive student loans. Our plan was for me to provide financial support to her while she finished nursing school, with the understanding that she would support me when I pursued medical school. This arrangement would provide us with some financial stability as I pursued my dream of becoming a doctor. At the time, it seemed like a brilliant plan, but looking back, it turned out to be one of the worst decisions I've ever made. There were several other options available to me. For instance, I could have encouraged her to take out more loans to support herself, while I focused on my dream of becoming a doctor. Sacrificing my future for her seemed like a reasonable choice back then. Waiting for her to finish nursing school and establish stability before I embarked on medical school appeared to be a solid plan. After all, I imagined spending my life with her, so sacrificing just 2 years for the love of my life seemed like a small price to pay. My fiancée wasn't just anybody. She was my partner in life. We lived together, sharing everything. She was essentially my spouse, and we even discussed having children one day. All we were waiting for was for both of us to kickstart our careers. About 6 months after graduation, I was still working full-time at a pharmacy retail chain, while she had about a year and a half left to become a nurse. However, our relationship had undergone significant changes. I began to suspect that she might be unfaithful because she started lying about things she shouldn't have been lying about, and the lies continued to pile up. Despite my suspicions, I held on to hope that things would improve. Nevertheless, I remained determined to pursue my dream of becoming a doctor and prepared for my medical school entrance exam. Meanwhile, I was stuck working as a pharmacy technician day in and day out, eagerly awaiting my fiancé's graduation, which was still a year and a half away. The bond between us was no longer as strong as it once was. We found ourselves frequently arguing, exchanging hurtful words. She would criticize me, calling me immature and overweight, while I would remind her that without my financial support, she wouldn't have achieved what she had. We often threatened to leave each other, but I always ended up staying because I saw the potential of what our relationship could become, rather than what it actually was. The truth was that she had changed from the woman I fell in love with initially. She made various excuses to avoid spending time with me, sometimes not coming home or answering my calls, only responding through text messages. However, occasional moments of clarity would remind me of my dreams, but my love for her always convinced me to continue enduring it all for the both of us. In hindsight, I should have pursued my dreams independently, regardless of our relationship. About 6 months before her graduation, I suggested the idea of having a baby, thinking it might restore our relationship and rekindle our love. However, she quickly dismissed the idea, stating that it wasn't the right time and we should wait until she graduated in 6 months. Then, 3 months before her nursing school graduation, I returned home from work one evening to find all her belongings gone. Initially, I thought we had been robbed, but it was strange because only her things were missing, the ones I had bought for her. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Instead, she sent me a text message explaining that our relationship was over and where she had left the engagement ring. She informed me that she had moved on with her life and suggested I do the same. Her approach was cold and businesslike, devoid of any emotion or consideration for the years we had spent together and the support I had provided throughout her 4 years of schooling. There was no phone call, just a text message. I felt betrayed and humiliated. In my attempts to seek answers, I texted her, questioning how she could do this to me. I spoke to her about the considerable number of years I had devoted to supporting her and expressed my expectation of receiving what I believed was rightfully owed to me. Despite numerous attempts to reach her through phone calls, she consistently refused to answer, eventually resorting to blocking my number. This series of events unfolded before me like a profoundly distressing scam that had transpired throughout our relationship. In the initial phases of our connection, I perceived her intelligence as somewhat below average. However, as time progressed, I came to realize the multifaceted nature of intelligence. It dawned on me that she had manipulated and taken advantage of the love I harbored for her. In essence, our relationship bore a striking resemblance to those deceptive online catfishing scams, albeit unfolding in person over the span of 6 to 7 years. She utilized my financial support to fund her education, and subsequently discarded me as though I were inconsequential, leaving me shattered. Had it not been for her actions, I could have completed my 4-year degree in under 2 years and been well on my way to pursuing a medical education. Her behavior left me grappling with deep-seated mistrust and depression, severely hindering my ability to function normally and adhere to my daily routine. 2 days following the blockage of my number, I resolved to wait for her outside the hospital where she worked, hoping to engage in a face-to-face confrontation. Patiently stationed in my car until her emergence from the building, I observed her heading toward a recently acquired German luxury car named Bayerische Motorenwerkzeug. Approaching her as she spotted me, she hastily rushed to her car without making eye contact, promptly speeding away. In hindsight, I should have grasped the message conveyed through her actions at that moment, but regrettably, I remained oblivious to the extent of the damage inflicted upon me. Subsequently, she shattered me to a degree that prompted the development of an unhealthy habit, monitoring her activities even when she had unequivocally distanced herself from me. I began shadowing her movements whenever I had free time, surreptitiously following her without her awareness. This unsettling behavior persisted for several months, driven by my inability to comprehend the abrupt termination of our 7-year-long engagement. In those days, I harbored the belief that I could win her back, unaware that she had long moved on, severing our connection nearly a year before officially concluding our relationship. Essentially, I had unknowingly facilitated her lifestyle through financial support, while she actively sought a new romantic interest. Reflecting on this tumultuous period, I acknowledged the error of my ways. 3 days later, finding myself back at the hospital parking lot, I returned to the very spot where she worked, intent on confronting her once more. Parked in my car for hours, well aware of her typical work hours, I observed her emerging from the hospital in her nursing attire, making her way to the Bayerische Motorenwerkzeug. Initially positioned close to the exit with plans to swiftly approach her, I had a change of heart upon opening my car door. Opting to discreetly observe her without her knowledge, my intention was to gain insights into her current living situation and the person responsible for giving her the Bayerische Motorenwerkzeug. I found it challenging to fathom that she could have acquired the vehicle independently, given our recent financial struggles. The car, which she now drove, happened to be her dream car, a topic she had frequently discussed. Following her for over 45 minutes, our journey led us away from familiar territories towards an affluent neighborhood, leaving me perplexed and wounded by the unfolding events. I maintained a few car lengths of distance, ensuring that she wouldn't notice me tailing her. Eventually, she turned into the driveway of a house boasting a 4-car garage, and as the garage door rolled open, it effectively concealed her car from view. This sight took me aback. It struck me that she must be cohabiting with someone of substantial wealth, for there seemed no feasible way she could afford such accommodations independently, even with her nursing degree. The accumulation of such wealth would demand years of dedicated effort and financial planning. Convinced that there was more to this story than met the eye, I decided to park my car a few blocks away and bide my time. Shortly thereafter, another vehicle approached the driveway, and to my intrigue, one of the 4 garage doors swung open, permitting the car entry. Though I couldn't discern the identity of the newcomer, my curiosity consumed me, compelling me to investigate further. Despite the encroaching darkness, I resolved to explore the situation. Perhaps I could catch a glimpse through a window, shedding light on the mysterious inhabitant of the house. Alighting from my car, I approached the fenced-off property cautiously. Circumnavigating the perimeter, I sought out a gap in the fence through which I might gain insight. However, my reconnaissance efforts were thwarted when I discovered security cameras monitoring the area, implying that my actions were under scrutiny. Realizing I was being watched, I promptly retreated and made my way back to my vehicle. As I drove home, my mind churned with questions and possibilities. The following morning, I mustered the resolve to confront the enigma that had unfolded before me. Calling in sick to work, I arrived at the scene early, eager to ascertain the identity of the individual associated with the previous day's events. Arriving around 6 a.m., well in advance of my ex-fiancee's scheduled shift commencement at 9 a.m., I stationed myself strategically, poised to observe any activity. Uncertain whether the mysterious vehicle had departed, I elected to park my car a few blocks away, from where I could maintain vigilance without arousing suspicion. With bated breath, I awaited the reappearance of the vehicle that had piqued my curiosity. Eventually, the garage door opened, and the vehicle emerged. Without delay, I trailed it discreetly, my heart pounding with anticipation. Following its trajectory, I found myself back at the hospital. A man in his mid-30s emerged from the vehicle, dressed in a smart suit. He exuded an air of familiarity, triggering a cascade of memories. Delving into the recesses of my mind, I recalled a photograph from my ex-fiancee's Instagram feed, captured roughly a year prior. In the image, she had introduced her new colleagues upon commencing her clinicals, and among them was the man now before me. Driven by a need to unravel the tangled web of deceit, I resolved to shadow him, endeavoring to glean insights into his relationship with my ex-fiancée. As he traversed the hospital corridors, I remained inconspicuous, observing his every move. His familiarity with the hospital layout suggested a prolonged association, one that likely extended beyond mere professional acquaintance. Reaching a pivotal moment, I watched as he entered an elevator, bound for the third floor. Swiftly, I ascended the stairwell, determined to close the gap between us. Catching up with him, I found myself face to face with the man who had unwittingly played a pivotal role in unraveling the fabric of my relationship. In that instant, as recognition dawned, I realized the gravity of the situation. He was the doctor featured in the Instagram photograph, the same individual who had been a constant presence in my ex-fiancee's professional sphere. With each passing moment, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a narrative characterized by betrayal and deceit. Reflecting on the events that had transpired, I couldn't help but question the authenticity of the relationship I had once cherished. The realization that my ex-fiancée had been involved with this man for an extended period left me reeling, grappling with a profound sense of betrayal. As I grappled with the aftermath of this revelation, I couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that plagued me. A doctor had supplanted me in her affections, possessing not only financial stability but also professional standing. In that moment of clarity, I understood that I could never hope to compete with the allure of security and prestige that he embodied. In hindsight, I couldn't help but wonder whether I had been blind to the signs that had been evident all along. Perhaps, had I been more attuned to the nuances of our relationship, I might have recognized the truth sooner. Yet, in the throes of love, clarity often eludes us, and it is only in retrospect that we are able to discern the full extent of our folly. As I grappled with the ramifications of this revelation, I resolved to embark on a journey of self-discovery, one that would enable me to reclaim my sense of worth and forge a path forward untethered by the specter of betrayal. Though the road ahead may be fraught with uncertainty, I am determined to emerge stronger, armed with the knowledge that true happiness lies not in the validation of others, but in the unwavering conviction of self-worth. I found myself in a tough situation, overweight, almost 25 years old, and struggling with a seemingly worthless bachelor's degree in biology. To make ends meet, I was working as a tech at a local pharmacy retail chain. My car was barely holding up, and all my savings had been spent on my now ex-fiancée before she left me for a doctor. The aftermath was brutal. Depression took hold of me, and the breakup shattered my sense of self. It was a dark period, and I felt utterly lost. During this difficult time, I found myself doing something I couldn't quite explain, secretly following my ex-fiancée around. This continued for weeks, a desperate attempt to find closure, although I never mustered the courage to confront her. The situation took a turn when I, in a lapse of judgment, fell asleep in my car parked on the same street as her house. Awakening to a knock on my window, I was met by the sight of my ex-fiancée's new boyfriend, a doctor, with her standing behind him, recording our interaction on her phone. They demanded that I roll down my window, and she unleashed a tirade of accusations, labeling me a weirdo and insisting that I stop following her. The one-sided confrontation lasted only about 5 minutes, during which I fumbled with my keys, desperately trying to start my ignition. As they both yelled angrily at me, barely audible through the chaos, the doctor questioned my sanity. They claimed to have noticed my persistent following, even documenting it, and threatened to obtain a restraining order against me. What they didn't know was that we had dated for nearly 7 years and were on the verge of getting married. The details of our past seemed lost on my ex-fiancée's new partner. To add to the embarrassment, my attempts to start my car proved futile for what felt like an eternity. The only barrier between us was my driver's side window. They asserted they had captured my activities on their security camera, intending to use it as evidence for a restraining order. It was a humiliating experience, a stark realization of how my life had taken a pathetic turn. Driving away, I felt a heavy mixture of stupidity and shame. The gravity of my situation hit me, My life had become a series of regrettable choices. 2 days later, a process server delivered a restraining order from my ex-fiancee and her current boyfriend. The reality sunk in, and I understood that if I continued my previous behavior, I could end up facing legal consequences. This unfortunate chapter in my life served as a wake-up call. I needed to reassess my actions, confront my emotions, and find a way to move forward. The road to recovery seemed daunting, but acknowledging the need for change was the first step towards reclaiming my sense of self-worth and rebuilding a life that had veered off course. That moment when I got served with a restraining order made me realize I needed to turn my life around. I made a decision to reorganize my life and focus on getting back into medical school. But about a month later, I got a call out of the blue from an ex-girlfriend from my past, the one I had left for my ex-fiancé. She wanted to talk about some news she had seen on social media. My ex-fiancé was getting married to another man. Now, I wasn't really into social media, so I had no idea about this development. It felt like my ex-girlfriend was calling just to rub it in my face because I had dumped her for my ex-fiancé. She was still bitter about being dumped, even though she was now married with kids. She didn't hold back, calling me a loser and warning me that my ex-fiancé was going to mess up my life. Before I could even apologize, she slammed the phone down on me. Hearing this news brought back all the emotions I had been trying so hard to move past. And it didn't end there. More people started reaching out to me, mutual friends, people I hadn't spoken to in a while, expressing surprise that my ex-fiancé and I weren't together anymore. It was getting so embarrassing that I started blocking people's numbers just to avoid these conversations. Out of curiosity, I decided to download Instagram, the app my ex-fiancée used to spend so much time on when we were together. She seemed really invested in it, and I noticed she had posted thousands of pictures. In just the 2 months she had known the new guy, they had already been on 2 trips together. I even found pictures of them together from over a year ago, which meant they had been seeing each other for over a year while we were engaged. It hit me then that about a year ago, she had stopped posting pictures of us together on Instagram. At the time, I hadn't really thought much of it, but now it all made sense. She had deleted every single picture of us together and even edited me out of some photos. It was like she had erased me from her life a long time ago, while I was still there supporting her financially. As I scrolled through her Instagram, I couldn't help but notice that while we were engaged, she was still seeking attention from other men. Her pictures became more revealing, and she started posting more suggestive pictures. But I had been completely oblivious to it all. Maybe if I had Instagram back then, I might have picked up on the signs that something wasn't right. Since her profile was public, I decided to follow her using a fake name and profile picture. But this harmless curiosity soon turned into an obsession as I found myself constantly checking her profile and monitoring her every move online. However, everything came crashing down when she posted that she was 5 months pregnant. This didn't add up because she had left me just 2 months ago. 5 months ago we were still together, albeit not as close as before. It left me wondering who the real father of the child was. And he had no clue about our past relationship. He probably thought I was just some random guy fixated on his new wife. I couldn't help but consider the possibility that the baby might be mine. But then she claimed she had been on birth control, which made me wonder if she had stopped taking it and was involved with both of us. It was a confusing and overwhelming situation, and I didn't know what to believe anymore. Update: upon learning about my ex-fiancé's pregnancy, now 5 months along, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might be the father. The thought of financially supporting a child was daunting, especially considering the strained relationship I had with my ex. It seemed unlikely that she would want me involved in the child's life or willing to co-parent with me. It appeared as though she was keeping the truth from the doctor, her current partner, about our past relationship of 7 years. Despite this, I couldn't muster any sympathy for him. It was his responsibility to uncover the truth, and I was still resentful that he had supported her in obtaining a restraining order against me without knowing the full story. I knew that eventually, the truth would come to light, and I was prepared to witness it all. In light of these circumstances, I made a conscious decision to turn the page and focus on getting my life back on track. I filled my days with work and made a commitment to prioritize my health by hitting the gym regularly and managing my calorie intake through intermittent fasting. Within a few weeks, I began to see results as the excess weight started to melt away. Additionally, I sought solace in spiritual support groups that emphasized practices like yoga and meditation. These gatherings not only provided me with a sense of community, but also introduced me to insightful and spiritually minded women. Despite facing challenges in the dating department after being out of the game for over 7 years, I found comfort in these supportive environments. My dedication to self-improvement extended to my academic pursuits as well. With my sights set on medical school, I immersed myself in rigorous study sessions in preparation for the entrance exam. Fortunately, the medical school I aspired to attend was conveniently located in the same city where I resided. With determination and discipline, I managed to shed around 40 pounds in just 2 months, a transformation that left those who had known me previously astounded by my physical change. My focus remained steadfast on maintaining a clean and healthy lifestyle, prioritizing regular exercise and wholesome nutrition. I made a conscious effort to distance myself from our mutual friends, changing my phone number and severing ties in pursuit of a fresh start. Fast forward 5 months, and my hard work paid off as I successfully passed the medical entrance exam and secured admission to medical school. My goal was ambitious, to complete medical school in 3 years or less, and then embark on approximately 5 years of residency to fulfill my dream of becoming a surgeon. 2 years into medical school, I found myself consumed by a monotonous routine of attending classes and tutoring sessions to supplement my income as a financially struggling medical student. It had been 2 years since my last relationship with my ex-fiancee, prompting me to consider dipping my toes back into the dating pool. Venturing into the world of online dating, particularly through platforms like Tinder, proved to be a frustrating endeavor. Despite my efforts, meaningful connections were scarce, and many encounters felt superficial. After 7 months of limited success, I decided to delete the app, feeling disheartened by the lack of genuine connections. In my quest for personal growth, I turned to online resources like YouTube videos on motivation and self-improvement, which led me to discover insightful books such as The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida and The Red Queen by Matt Ridley. These resources offered valuable insights into masculine and feminine behaviors, as well as mate selection and attractiveness, providing me with a deeper understanding of interpersonal dynamics. While I gleaned valuable knowledge from these resources, I recognized that practical experience was equally essential in navigating the complexities of relationships and personal growth. I made a decision to dedicate an hour each day to approaching attractive women. Initially, I struggled with approaching anxiety, feeling nervous about starting conversations. However, I learned about something called the flow state, where you get completely absorbed in an activity, and I discovered the importance of building momentum. These things helped me improve my results significantly. During my daily hour of approaching, I would go to 2 different grocery stores within that time frame. Surprisingly, I managed to get at least one solid phone number from an attractive girl each time. In just 21 days of doing this, I ended up with 15 phone numbers. Out of those, I went on dates with 11 women, and 5 of them even became regular friends with benefits. After about 3 months, I decided to take a brief break from all the dating. Managing the numerous text messages and dates had become quite stressful. I found myself in a position where I had so many attractive women interested in me that I was the one canceling on them. It felt like I was living the life of a famous rock star or athlete, with all the attention I was getting. But as time went on, I began to feel like it was becoming too much. At one point, I was simultaneously seeing 9 different women. Despite all the dating, I made sure it didn't interfere with my studies. I had a structured daily routine that included going out, studying, working, attending school, dating, and spending time with these women. If a woman didn't fit into my schedule, I would part ways with her. Even though I was successful with dating, I continued to go out for an hour each day. It wasn't because I wanted more women, but because I enjoyed the rush of endorphins I got from facing my fears and approaching strangers. One day during my usual 1-hour approach session at a grocery store, I saw a woman with 2 kids who looked familiar. Something about her reminded me of my ex-fiancee. Intrigued, I followed her briefly and called out her name. To my surprise, she turned around and approached me. We exchanged greetings, and she even gave me a light hug, which caught me off guard. After the hug, she mentioned that she recognized my voice but didn't remember me. It had been over 2.5 years since she served me with a restraining order, and it felt like a lifetime ago. She explained that she had tried to reach out to me before, but couldn't find my contact information, so she eventually gave up. I asked her why she would want to contact someone she had taken legal action against, and she apologized, expressing regret for how things ended between us. During our conversation, I couldn't help but notice that she didn't seem as beautiful to me as she once did. I used to think she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, but now she seemed average, and she had gained some weight. It made me realize how much I had changed since our breakup. Despite once being deeply upset about our split and spending so much time following her, she no longer matched the type of women I was involved with in terms of looks. She seemed to notice that I wasn't really interested, and she looked nervous as she asked me questions. After about 5 minutes, I tried to end the conversation and leave, but she seemed reluctant to stop talking. I told her I was running late and needed to go, but she asked for my phone number and suggested we get coffee sometime. I didn't really want to get involved with her again, but I couldn't shake the thought that the 2-year-old girl might be my daughter. Even though I didn't want to see my ex-fiancee again, I wanted a chance to find out if the little girl was mine, preferably through a paternity test without my ex-fiancee knowing. We exchanged numbers and arranged to meet up. 3 days later, I texted her to confirm our plans. I hoped she would bring the kids so we could meet at a family picnic spot. She was already there when I arrived, trying to hug me, but I didn't respond warmly. She sat down with an awkward expression, probably not having told her husband that she was meeting up with the guy she had filed a restraining order against over 2 years ago. I sat down too, and she started apologizing to me. She apologized for breaking up with me through text, getting a restraining order, and not keeping her promise to support me after all the support I had given her. She also mentioned that she noticed I seemed more assertive and in control now. I asked her about her job, and she said she worked at a hospital across town. I tried to avoid talking about our past relationship entirely. Whenever she brought it up, I wanted her to know that I had moved on. Most of my questions were about the kids. I told her how cute they were and asked if she could bring them to a water park the next day so I could see them again. She said she wouldn't have time the next day because of work, but she suggested we plan for the day after. During our conversation, she was clearly flirting with me, trying to seduce me. But it didn't affect me much. I've learned a lot about social dynamics lately and understood the importance of staying composed. Her flirtations were probably a way to see if I had any weaknesses, but I remained unfazed. The more I stood my ground, the more she seemed to be attracted to me. I was already quite busy and couldn't spend time at a water park, but it was important for me to find out if the baby was mine. So I kept the conversation going, hoping for another chance to meet the kids and possibly get a paternity test done without her knowledge. It was a delicate situation, but I was determined to find out the truth. When the day of our planned meeting finally arrived, she canceled on short notice, explaining that her youngest daughter wasn't feeling well. We decided to reschedule for the following week. In my initial plan, I had thought of using a swab collection kit for DNA testing, but I discarded the idea last minute, worrying it might raise suspicion from my ex-fiancée. So I consulted a friend who happens to be a genetic technologist, and together we brainstormed alternative ways to collect DNA samples. Considering the summer heat, we thought of checking if there was an ice cream or smoothie bar nearby. I could discreetly collect a DNA sample using a straw or cup. On the day we were set to meet, I arrived early at the water park, anticipating their arrival. When they finally showed up, I suggested getting some smoothies for the kids due to the hot weather. The atmosphere was surprisingly friendly, and my ex-fiancée seemed quite amicable towards me. We engaged in various conversations, even sharing jokes about the time she caught me napping in my car. She inquired about my relationship status, and I mentioned being in a serious one. She, in turn, revealed that her marriage wasn't going as smoothly as she had hoped, and they were presently separated, attempting to reconcile. I avoided probing into the details of their separation, focusing instead on maintaining a positive conversation. My primary attention, however, remained on the 2-year-old, waiting for a suitable moment to collect the straw she used for her drink. Despite the seemingly pleasant day, I couldn't forget how my ex-fiancée had treated me in the past. I acknowledged that she was still the same person, and I admitted to myself that I had allowed her to take advantage of me during our relationship. Post our conversation at the water park, I sensed that there were challenges in her marriage, and she might be contemplating leaving. However, her husband appeared to be the more viable option for her at the moment, so she was sticking with him. While something significant had prompted their separation, I didn't delve into the details or express much interest. Following our time at the park, I successfully managed to collect the straw with enough saliva on it for the DNA test. The next day, I promptly delivered it to my friend, the genetic technologist, for testing. The results confirmed what I had suspected. The 2-year-old was indeed my daughter. Now faced with this revelation, I found myself at a crossroads. I could choose to expose my ex-fiancee by sharing the DNA results with her husband, potentially jeopardizing their chances of reconciliation. However, I hesitated, considering the potential backlash and the fact that I wasn't prepared for co-parenting at the moment. In the end, I decided that the best course of action for my daughter was to be raised in a stable home. With my residency set to commence in less than a year, I would have some income, albeit limited. After completing my residency in 5 years, I planned to reassess the situation. I resolved to stay in contact with my ex-fiancée, ensuring I could see my daughter whenever she allowed it. This intricate situation demanded careful consideration and thoughtful planning for the sake of all involved.